The last 18 months have seen house prices skyrocket across Canada. So what, or more specifically, who determines the value of a house? That's what we're talking about on this episode of Prairie Real Estate. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Prairie Real Estate, where I educate you all about real estate. If you're a returning viewer, you're awesome. If you're new here, my name is Matthew Pfeiffer. I'm a real estate agent from Regina, Saskatchewan. Now, if the internet is to believe me as a realtor, I'm gonna make sure that house prices are as high as possible so I can make way more money. Boy, I wish it was that easy. But on this episode of Prairie Real Estate, I wanna walk through the different people that'll be putting values on the house that you're looking to buy or sell, and walk you through how they come about those values and which one is the most important one to pay attention to. But before we start that, let's do as we always do, start off with another terrible joke. Recently, my doctor diagnosed me with a very significant illness. I just cannot stop telling terrible airport jokes. He told me it's terminal. If you have a terrible joke that I can use in a future episode of Prairie Real Estate, put it in the comments below. And if you love this video, give me a like and subscribe if you want to keep up to date on Canadian real estate. There's a lot of times I'm working with buyers and they say, why is this house priced at $300,000 when I checked the city tax assessment and it said the value of the house is $275,000? I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. The city doesn't have a very accurate idea of what that house is worth. A city tax assessment is really just a guesstimation on the value of a house. Nobody from the city has gone through and physically viewed the property. They're not looking at what other houses are selling for in the neighborhood, and they're definitely not coming to check at what the mechanical systems, what type of shape those are in. The city tax assessment is probably the least accurate measurement of house prices that you can look at. As a buyer, I wouldn't put any weight in what the city has the value of the house at for determining an offer price, and I sure wouldn't list my house at what the city valuation has at. If you have an appraiser come in to give you an opinion of value, there's two methods they're going to use to determine, in their opinion, the most probable sale value. That's right, most probable, that's what they're asked to do. They're not asked to find the highest sale value, the most probable sale value when a property is properly exposed to the market. The first approach is called the cost approach. This is more commonly used in new construction, but it can be applied to resale homes for sale, and that is when an appraiser is looking at what it would cost to rebuild this house. It's fairly easy for new construction. You know what the cost of materials and labor are at the time, and of course, the lot value. So that's a pretty straightforward calculation. Of course, a used house is gonna have some deterioration of value because it's used. Some of the systems are gonna be older. So what the appraisers do is they look at what's called effective age. The theory goes that if you build a house today, lock the door, that house in 50 years would fall over. So the appraisers are coming at this from an approach of the effective age, knowing the life cycle of house is 50 years old. So if it's a used house, but they've put brand new shingles, windows, siding, things like that on it in the last year or two, of course, that will bring that effective age up or make it much younger. So they're going to look at the house as a whole and then devalue it based on the effective age of the systems, the components, everything inside the house. That's how they come about value in the cost approach in an appraisal. The second and far more common approach that an appraiser will use to determine the value of your house is called the direct sales comparison approach. They're gonna look at past sales and compare it to the property that they're looking at right now. So that's gonna be called the subject property. Comparables, usually there will be three, A, B, and C. And what you have to do is make the comparables look as close to the subject property because you know the values of those. So let's just say the subject property has a double attached garage and the comparable you have has a single attached garage. Well, the double attached is more valuable than the single attached, so you have to increase the value, the sale price of property A to make it look more like the subject property. And the same thing happens in reverse if the subject property doesn't have something that the comparable has. Maybe the comparable was 100 square feet bigger. There will be a calculation that the appraiser will do to account for that larger square footage, so they will decrease the value of, say, property B to make it look more like the subject property. That's how the appraisers go about. They have this calculations they do, and they try to make their comparables look as close to the subject property and come about a valuation for you. But this direct sales comparison has a major Achilles heel. I'm going to talk about that near the end of the video and how it impacts an appraiser's opinion of value. Of course, as the internet says, us as realtors are going to make sure that house prices are as high as possible so we can make as much money, mad bank, as we possibly can. When I price a house, I look at the next vacation I want to take, how much money am I going to need to pay for that vacation, and the next listing I have, whatever I need in commission, that's what that house price is going to be, and I'm going to get somebody to pay for it. If only it were that easy. Let's look at what it actually takes to price out a house as a realtor. When a realtor comes in to give you an opinion of value on your house, they're going to look at it kind of the way an appraiser does, looking at those past sales. What does that tell you about what that house should be priced at? But as well, if we're putting up on the market today, what's the competition going to be? Because that is going to be very important how we should price the house. Maybe we think this house should be priced at $300,000 based on the comparable sales, but all the other houses in the neighborhood are on this market right now at $275,000. We could put it up for $300,000, but that'll probably just get the neighbor's house sold faster because buyers are going to look at our house, say it's $300,000 and it's maybe a fantastic house, but I can buy the one down the street for $275,000. Yeah, I think most buyers are going to look at that and take that one instead. And it's not just listing agents that are going to see house prices the same way. So are buyer's agents. They're looking at, of course, what are the past sales, but also what other properties are on the market they can take their clients to and show them that might be very similar, potentially a different price, and what's going on market trends. Are we seeing markets going up? Are markets going down? So the realtor approach to house prices is much like the appraiser. We're looking at past sales, but also using real-time data to determine what the value of a house should be. Have you ever heard the saying that something is only worth what a buyer is willing to pay and a seller is willing to sell it for? Well, that, my friends, is 100% accurate on house prices. Now, you may think that this house is overpriced. Maybe I, as the real estate agent, think it's only worth $200,000, and the appraiser says it's only worth $200,000. City tax assessment might say $175,000. At the end of the day, what that buyer is willing to pay for that house, that's what that house is worth. I don't know how many times I've had people say they can't believe what that house sold for. That's way overpriced. Somebody's willing to pay that. Or when I do my market updates, pretty much every single time, there's a comment in there that says Canadian house prices are way overvalued. The house down the street sold for X amount, and that is crazy. Nobody should be paying that. Well, that's what those buyers were willing to pay for that house, and that's what those sellers were willing to sell it for. So that's the value of a house. Let's talk some real world examples where I know that buyers valued something and were willing to pay more to get it. My own house, when my wife and I were looking for houses, we really wanted a house that backed on a green space or a park. We found a house that had that. Knowing that that was going to be tough to find another one like that, we upped our offer price. We're in multiple offers because we wanted that house with that location. We're willing to pay more to get that. Whereas other buyers, maybe it wasn't as important to them. We had friends. They needed to be in a certain school district for their kids. So when they were looking for houses, the house that came up that was in that district that fit their buyer needs, they bought that house. They weren't as concerned with the price because they needed to be in that school district. So price was far less important than the school district was. The prices of houses are subjective. They're not objective. You don't know what's going to motivate somebody to look at buying or paying more for that house because it has that feature. Could be it has a pool. My parents wanted a house with a pool because they want to teach us how to swim. They were lifeguards when they met. That was really important to somebody else. They might say, I got to fill in that pool. That's worth less money to me. So when you're looking at what the recent sales are in the neighborhood, don't laugh at it and say, oh my God, I'd never pay that for that house. It's way too much. That's way overpriced. Well, you never know what it was worth to that buyer. Maybe their grandparents lived across the street and being close to their grandparents was very valuable to them. The house in the next neighborhood over, well, it's not worth as much because it doesn't have that, their grandparents being right next door across the street. And that makes me curious. What are you as a buyer, if you're looking to buy a house, what's important to you? Or you'd say, hey, if a house had this, I'd be willing to pay more. This would be the reason I would buy this house. Let me know in the comments below. By now, it should be pretty obvious that besides determining what your taxes are going to be, the property tax assessment value that a city will give your home really has absolutely no bearing on what that house is going to sell for. Appraisers do a fantastic job finding values of homes looking at the data. But that's what they do. They look at the data and they're a little beholden to the data, because if markets are appreciating or depreciating, the data they're looking at is from past events, so they're beholden to those market trends. And of course, because they're just looking at data, there's no emotion for an appraiser. They're just going to look at this purely in a mathematical way. They're providing no opinion of value, where a buyer might have an emotional attachment to something in the house and be willing to pay more for it because of that. Of course, us as realtors, we just wave that magic wand and boom, that's what the value of a home is. We're just going to make that up, and so make sure that we make some mad bank. But what do you, as a buyer, how do you determine the value of a house? What is the price you should pay for a house when you're looking at buying? Of course, you're going to look at the past sales. What are similar houses selling for? But also, what else could you buy instead? So what else is on the market? What's the competition like? How many offers are potentially going to be on this property? All that's going to matter. What types of renovations or repairs does the house need? That should factor in what the house is valued at. And then of course, there's the things that you can't really put a number on. If it's close to a school or family, maybe there's something like that back in green space that's really important to you, that you're willing to pay more to get, because that's what you want in a house. Because buying a house, it's got to improve your lifestyle. So make sure that when you are trying to decide what the value of a house is, you've gathered as much information as you possibly can. Then look at it. How does it fit within your budget? And what are these things that are in this house? How do they value to you? Are they important? Are they potentially worth paying more for? That's a very subjective thing that you can't just put an objective value on a house. House is worth what a buyer is willing to pay for it at the end of the day. And if you want to get more information, right here, that's my first time home buyer guide. That'll give you all the information you need to know about the process of buying a house. And right here, this is what the YouTube algorithm says you need to watch next on Prairie Real Estate.